Today, about 5,500 tigers live in the wild across our entire planet, and, strangely enough, this is good news, because back in 2010, only about 3,200 remained. The beast is slowly rising from the bottom, and for the first time in a long while, this story has been touched by a faint but genuine light. The trouble is, behind that handsome number hides something truly unsettling. The number of tigers held captive by people in the United States of America alone is greater today than all the wild tigers in the world put together. And the beast itself has shrunk to a tiny scrap of land and now occupies only about 5% of the territory through which its ancestors once roamed freely. If we could gather all the wild tigers of the world in one place, they'd fit into the stands of a single stadium, and even those stands wouldn't be filled to capacity. And yet tiger faces stare at us from literally everywhere. People see them almost every day and have long since stopped finding it remarkable. The tiger has become the national animal of several countries at once. The Eastern calendar even has an entire year of the tiger, which arrives with great fanfare once every 12 years. A tiger's head shows off on fuel advertisements and on boxes of breakfast cereal. The tiger has become the fearsome emblem of sports teams and a friendly mascot of the Olympic Games. The picture that emerges is strange and bitter. The living beast has almost vanished, while its image has multiplied without end and seized the entire world. This is precisely where the great deception hides, the one that this whole story begins with. Without even noticing, people have replaced the living tiger with a convenient picture, because a picture needs absolutely none of what a real beast requires. A painted tiger needs no dense forest, no prey, no vast territory to roam freely. It doesn't go hungry for weeks on end, doesn't freeze in the snow, doesn't search for a mate, and never dies at human hands. It's convenient, beautiful, and completely safe. And that's exactly why we've come to love it so easily and so deeply. For a long time, I myself was convinced that I knew, if not everything about tigers, then certainly a great deal. Striped, orange, dangerous, king of the jungle. What more, you'd think, is there to find out? But the moment I started really digging into the subject, almost every notion I had crumbled right before my eyes. It turned out that this much-vaunted perfect killer misses far more often than it hits, and sometimes goes hungry for many days in a row. It turned out that a single tiger holds up an entire forest region, on which the water and food of millions of people far downstream depend. It turned out that right now, as we're speaking about this, tigers are being reintroduced to a country where they hadn't been seen for more than 70 long years. And it turned out that more of these beasts live in ordinary American backyards and private enclosures than in all the forests of vast Asia. But before we talk about the real tiger, it's worth understanding what kind of tiger we invented ourselves, because that imagined beast has lived inside the human mind for centuries. In ancient China, the king of all beasts was considered to be not the lion, as we tend to think, but the tiger. On this predator's forehead, nature has placed a dark pattern of stripes, and observant people made out in it the outline of a sign that in Chinese writing means king. It looked as though nature herself had written the beast's lofty title right on its brow, and there was simply no arguing with that. In the year of the tiger, people credited it with special courage and strength, sincerely believing it could drive evil and misfortune away from the home. Small children had little hats and shoes lovingly sewn for them bearing a tiger's face, so that the striped guardian would shield them from every wicked thing in the world. In India, the tiger became the national animal outright, a living symbol of the land itself and its ancient power. In the 18th century, the ruler of the southern principality of Mysore, by the name of Tipu Sultan, loved this beast so deeply that he proudly nicknamed himself the Tiger of Mysore. He decorated his throne and his soldiers' uniforms with tiger stripes, and he also commissioned skilled craftsmen to make a remarkable thing, a nearly life-size mechanical tiger mauling a fallen enemy soldier. This old toy with its moving parts has survived to our day and now stands in a museum far from its homeland in London, quietly reminding us of a man who dreamed of taking all the tiger's might for himself, every last drop. In Korea, the tiger has been considered from time immemorial a stern guardian standing on the very border between the world of the living and the world of spirits. People painted it on temple gates and on household charms, feared and revered it at the same time. And it's no coincidence at all that the tiger was chosen as the mascot of the Olympic Games, once proudly hosted by the city of Seoul. And here, at last, the very trap I'm telling all this for begins to show through. The tiger as symbol is incredibly convenient for us, since it needs no fresh prey, no clean water, no forest corridors to cross safely from one woodland to another. It lives perfectly well inside our heads, on flags, on boxes and sports emblems, and there nothing threatens it at all. But a real, living, breathing tiger needs every one of these things simply to remain alive one more day. For centuries, we've admired a beautiful and obedient image, while the beast itself has been quietly disappearing where the bright picture ends and the real forest begins. And if we truly want to understand anything at all about the tiger, we'll have to step beyond that convenient picture and finally come face to face with whatever has been hiding behind it all this time. The first thing that catches your eye when you look at a tiger is its bright orange stripes, and it seems to us as if you couldn't design a more conspicuous beast. In fact, it's arranged precisely the other way around, because this coloring was made not for us, but for those the tiger hunts. Deer and other hoofed animals distinguish colors far worse than humans, and essentially can't see orange as bright at all. For them it blends into a dull greenish-gray tone, which means an orange predator dissolves before their eyes into foliage, shadows, and dry grass, while the vertical dark stripes break its silhouette into pieces, and instead of a creeping beast, the prey sees only a play of light and shadow. The most amazing thing is that these stripes on a tiger are not only on its fur, they're on the skin itself. If the animal were shaved, the pattern wouldn't go anywhere because it's a special design of pigment, and every tiger has its own, as unique as our fingerprints. The tiger has one more secret detail that few people notice: the white spots on the backs of its ears. According to one theory, these are a kind of false eyes. When the tiger flattens its ears, the enemy thinks the beast is staring straight at it, and an attack from behind falters. At the same time, these light markings help tiger cubs avoid losing their mother in the tall, dense grass, since they follow the bright spots like two beacons. And behind all this beauty hides the real weaponry. The tiger's fangs are the longest of any modern cat, and reach 7, sometimes even 10 centimeters. The claws hide in the soft pads of the paws and only come out at the necessary moment, staying sharp, and the tongue is covered with stiff, backward-facing spines, which the beast uses to scrape meat right off the bone. Large prey the tiger doesn't tear apart, but strangles, clamping the throat shut, while small prey it takes with a short bite to the back of the neck, instantly snapping the spine. And now the most unexpected thing, for the sake of which it's worth forgetting everything we've ever been shown in the movies. This much-vaunted perfect killer misses almost every time. Barely 1 hunt in 10 succeeds, sometimes 1 in 20 attempts, and the tiger regularly goes hungry for many days in a row. The real tiger is far more often a wet, exhausted beast that has once again failed to catch its prey and now lies in the cold grass, gathering its strength. But if the hunt does succeed, it drags the carcass to cover and feeds on it for several days, jealously guarding it from outsiders. And it can drag prey heavier than itself, something several grown men together couldn't budge from the spot. In a single leap, A tiger covers 9 or even 10 meters, and in a burst of speed it can accelerate to over 50 kilometers per hour, but only over the shortest distance because it simply isn't built for a long chase. Its voice deserves a word of its own. A tiger's roar can be heard for several kilometers, and hidden within that sound is a special low-frequency component that the human ear can no longer detect. It's believed that this very invisible wave can briefly paralyze prey, freezing it in inexplicable terror just before the strike. And you should forget forever the fairy tale about the cat that's afraid of water. The tiger swims beautifully, crosses wide channels between islands, and on a hot day will deliberately wade into a river to cool off. And for all this power, the tiger is a loner that communicates with its kin at a distance. From a single streak of scent left on a tree trunk, another animal reads an entire message: who passed by, of what sex, and in what condition. Tigers come in very different forms, and behind each subspecies lie completely different fates. The Bengal tiger is the most numerous, and that's precisely why India alone holds roughly 3/4 of all the planet's wild tigers. The Amur tiger has learned to live in the cold. It has thick, warm fur, something resembling a mane on its neck, and paler coloring. And this is the very animal that came back from almost nothing. The Sumatran tiger remains the last of the island tigers after its Balinese and Javanese relatives vanished forever, and now it's melting away, along with the forests being cleared for palm oil. And then there's the true ghost of our time, the South China tiger. As recently as the middle of the last century, there were about 4,000 of them, but people were convinced they were pests and exterminated them by the thousands. It hasn't been spotted in the wild for several decades now, and today it survives only as 150 to 200 close relatives in zoo cages. This extinction didn't happen in distant antiquity. It happened literally within living memory. And here we come to the most important idea in this whole story. A single tiger isn't just an animal. It's an entire living forest. A solitary tiger occupies a vast territory. A tough Amur male needs hundreds of square kilometers, while in prey-rich India, a tigress can make do with 20 or 30. By protecting the land of one predator, we open an enormous umbrella over it, beneath which thousands of other creatures find shelter, from insects to birds and deer. Let the tiger disappear and everything collapses. Wild boar and hoofed animals multiply unchecked, devour the young growth, and the forest stops renewing itself. Scientists have called this the empty forest syndrome. The trees are still standing, but inside there's already a dead silence. And these tiger forests hold enormous reserves of carbon and protect the headwaters of great rivers, on which the water and harvests of hundreds of millions of people downstream depend. So it turns out that a person who has never seen a tiger in their life eats rice grown on fields, watered from forests that were preserved, in part, for the sake of this very animal. And it all starts with tiny cubs. Usually 2 to 4 are born, blind and helpless, weighing only about a kilogram. Their eyes open only after a week or two. They live alongside their mother for about 2 years, and roughly half of them never make it to adulthood. The one that does survive heads off into a forest that, over recent decades, has become far smaller and more crowded, where roads, poachers' snares, and other powerful males are already waiting. The tiger's misfortune began with a simple and terrible human desire to take its strength for oneself. For centuries, people believed that the beast's might could somehow be appropriated, worn, eaten, or hung on a wall, and this belief cost tigers more than anything else in the world. In colonial times, aristocratic tiger hunting turned into a full-blown competition where wealthy and influential men measured themselves by the number of predators killed, like points in a cruel game. There's a surviving account of a royal hunt in 1911 when a distinguished guest with his lavish retinue shot nearly 40 tigers in just a few days. Among the hunters was a man named Jim Corbett, who at first tracked man-eating tigers terrorizing entire villages, but in time understood the essential truth and transformed from a shooter into a defender of nature. It was his name that was later given to India's first national park, as if fate itself had decided to right an old wrong through him. To grasp the scale of what humanity has done, a single figure is enough. In just 1 century, the tiger lost about 95% of its ancestral lands, which once stretched in a vast band from Turkey in the west to the Far East, and the island of Bali in the east. And the animal's numbers crashed from 100,000 to today's pitiful few thousand. A huge role in this was played by demand for tiger body parts. Bones were ground into remedies for aches and pains, brewed into a special wine that was passed off as a miraculous tonic, and hides became luxury items and loud markers of high status. It reached the point where one of the world's most revered spiritual teachers publicly condemned the wearing of tiger skins, and after his words, people burned those skins right in the public squares. The domestic trade in tiger products was banned back in 1993, but demand didn't go anywhere. It simply moved into the shadows. And that shadow turned out to be vast. Between the year 2000 and 2018 alone, authorities in various countries seized parts from more than 2,000 tigers across 30 countries. And that's only what was intercepted at the borders. You might think the solution is simple. Since tigers are scarce in the wild, just breed them in captivity. But this is exactly where another bitter truth lies hidden. The tiger farms of Southeast Asia don't help save wild animals, yet their living merchandise keeps surfacing on the black market. One of the most notorious stories happened in 2016, when an inspection of a famous monastery that kept dozens of tigers on display for tourists turned into a real nightmare. Inside the freezers, investigators found dozens of dead cubs, and the picturesque spot for photos with predators turned out to be nothing more than a cover for trafficking. A similar tragedy hides behind the fashion for white tigers, which various shows so love to flaunt. The white tiger isn't a special rare species at all, but a fluke of nature, a pigmentation defect that people deliberately fix by breeding close relatives together. The price for that beautiful white coat is crossed eyes, twisted legs, diseased joints, and a host of other ailments that audiences are never told about. And here surfaces that very figure with which we began this whole conversation. In the United States alone, there are more tigers in captivity than there are wild ones on the entire planet. Most of them are mixed mongrels that can never again be released into the forest. In December of 2022, a law was finally passed there banning ordinary people from keeping tigers at home and from photographing the public with cubs in their arms. It was a direct response to the strange subculture of private owners who had turned living predators into household entertainment and objects of bragging rights. We also can't forget those who live side by side with the tiger. For a poor village family, losing a cow or a goat to a predator isn't a minor inconvenience. It's a genuine catastrophe that deprives people of food and livelihood. And when villagers go out against the animal in desperation, what drives them is not malice, but having no way out. Besides, it's more often wounded or very old tigers that attack people, ones no longer able to catch ordinary prey. That's why what truly helps isn't punishment, but simple, wise measures. Fair compensation for lost livestock, sturdy enclosures that a predator can't break into, and the careful relocation of villages away from tiger trails. Today, people have learned to search for the living tiger in entirely new ways. It used to be tracked through legends and prints on the ground, but now hidden camera traps have come to the rescue, snapping the animal on their own in the night, along with the skill of identifying each tiger by its unique pattern of stripes. From a single confiscated bone or hide, scientists can determine exactly which forest the animal came from and help catch the poachers. But the real success story lies elsewhere. In 2010, 13 countries where tigers still lived came together and promised one another that they'd double the number of wild animals by the next year of the tiger. They didn't quite double it, but over these years the tiger population has grown by roughly 74%, reaching that figure of 5,500. Tiny Nepal nearly tripled its tigers, raising their number from just over 100 to 350. And at the very end, something happened that until recently was hard to believe. In September of 2024, 2 Amur tigers were brought to a reserve in Kazakhstan to return the animal to Central Asia more than 70 years after it had vanished from there completely. And in 2026, several more wild tigers were delivered to them, along with cubs, to start a new free life in a place that had long stood silent. Still, it's too early to relax. Over the past 20 years, the tiger has disappeared forever from several countries in Southeast Asia. Poachers' snares keep working, and forests are still being cut down. But if we can find the strength to strip away the symbol we've painted onto the tiger, we'll finally see the real animal. Not a villain and not a toy, but a living predator with an entire land of rivers, soils, and forests standing behind it. The tiger doesn't need our legends and pretty pictures. It needs forest, prey, water, and a place where it can simply live by its own rules, not ours. And if we truly lose it, we'll lose one of the last places on Earth where a large free animal still remains its own master.